Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this June 5, 2014 edition of Nightcast. Today in Europe, commemorations are taking place in Portsmouth and Normandy to mark 70 years since the beginning, since the D-Day bombings in France. British and American and Canadian troops took part in the largest seaborne invasion in history, landing on the beaches of Normandy in German-occupied Western Europe.
The exact origins of the drumhead service is not entirely clear, but we certainly know it dates back hundreds of years from when drums were used on the battlefield as communication, sending signals to different parts of the battlefield. And then on completion of the battle, or whenever there was a requirement for a religious service, the drums could be used, they'd be stacked, and then the regimental colours would be draped over them, and then it could be turned automatically into an altar for the service to be able to take place.
Let us remember before God all who took part in the Normandy landings, those who gave their lives as comrades in the British Army, the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, and from other countries, who we remember with pride.
And now eyes to the skies as the parachutists reenact that moment 70 years ago.
Here at Portsmouth, which was the main departure point for those troops as they headed across the channel to the Normandy beaches, we're watching an amphibian landing, a staged amphibian landing, and you can see just there in the water HMS Bulwark. A flypast by the Red Arrows here in Portsmouth as part of the D-Day commemorations, and absolutely spectacular as they flew past the War Memorial here in Portsmouth and continue to fly over the water, which was of course the scene of all of the action 70 years ago.
Friends, and it's good to remember what happened 70 years ago during World War II, round 2 of World War, because there's a round 3 that's coming, and all of that actually relates to Bible prophecy. If we take a look for a moment, let's change the chart. There's our 6 seals from Revelation. Let's bring that forward, and I'm going to switch this on over to the chart from the rule of the Gentile kingdoms, and we're going to come right down to the bottom corner for the 9th and 10th horn, as Daniel wrote it up in Daniel 7. But then if we swing this on over to the other side of the chart, at the bottom, let's see, can we get over there to that right side so you can see it a little better? Let me see if I can go tight down here. Where, as Revelation 17 labels it, as the 6th head and the 7th head. 6th head in Revelation 17 is the same thing as the 9th horn in Daniel 7, and the 7th head in Revelation 17 is the same thing as the 10th horn in Daniel 7. In Daniel 7. Now, the 6th head, you see at the top row here, occurred during World War II, and this is the 6th head. This was a revival of the Holy Roman Empire that occurred between 1936 and 1945 during World War II. And the 7th head is yet to be future. It'll be the final head, the final revival of the Holy Roman Empire, which will occur during round 3 of World War. So Friends, it's good to take, as I was saying, it's good to take a look back at events from World War II 70 years ago, such as they were commemorating in Europe today with the celebrations that you just saw the video on. And putting our chart back up on the screen for a moment, that will, when round 3 of World War kicks off, that'll be the next major event in prophecy. That'll be the fulfillment of the 5th seal, as you see over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the Great Tribulation. It'll be a time of the martyrdom of God's saints. It'll be the time of the revival of the Holy Roman Empire, its final and last revival. The 7th head is described in prophecy. It'll be a time when a beast power, as the Bible puts it, comes to power. It'll be the beast will be a new empire, the new Holy Roman Empire, where the Pope will hold a coronation ceremony in Emperor's Hall, and most likely he'll put the crown on the head of a German emperor who will be made. That emperor will become the beast, the head of the Holy Roman Empire revived. It'll be a revival of either 10 nations or 10 regions where the Pope and those involved may totally map Europe so that there's 5 from the east, 5 from the west that give their power for a short time, long enough for that beast to kick off World War III, to start martyring God's saints, and for Jacob's trouble, the time of Jacob's trouble, to be ushered in, a time that Jesus Christ described as a time so bad that it's nothing worse since the beginning of the world, and no nor ever shall be. And thankfully it'll never be repeated, the coming time that's going to be a horrific time. World War III, martyrdom of God's saints, and looking back at World War II, which ended in 1945, we're in a long recess that could spring together overnight. Who could have predicted last year what would have happened this year in Ukraine, and the way Russia is handling itself in regard to the Ukraine and so on? We'll have news on that, by the way, today in today's news. And but next I want to take you to a story that relates to this 4th seal. Now, this 4th seal, Jesus Christ described with 3 different terms that the gospel writers wrote up. The primary term was loimos, disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. But Christ also said, which gets hinged on this seal because it happens before the Great Tribulation, there would be a lot of seismus, a lot of seismic activity, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground such as earthquakes, commotions in the air such as gale force winds of all kinds, including heavy rains and flash floods, like is in our next news story, that we'd see in different diverse places around the world. And even though it's died down somewhat today, friends, I want to tell you about it because it relates to that 4th seal. Yesterday, tropical storm Boris brought heavy rains, flash floods, and landslides to large parts of the southern Mexican coast and northern Guatemala. The weather system, as I said, is now weakened into a trough of low pressure, but continues to drench the area. Karina Valendia has the report on it.
Torrents of rainwater pour onto a road in Guatemala. For this man in Solola, west of the capital, an umbrella just won't do. Similar scenes in neighboring southern Mexico, as the region copes with the effects of tropical storm Boris. It is now being downgraded to a depression, but the bad weather has continued to move northward, leaving huge waves crashing ashore. Many homes were flooded in the coastal town of Conchalito, where fishermen struggled to salvage their boats. Some refused to leave for fear their properties could be looted.
I stay up during the night, so I can move things around or see if someone comes in to try to take something.
In the south of Mexico, authorities declared an orange alert and moved people to shelters. the United States Hurricane Center has warned people to remain vigilant. The system is expected to produce heavy rainfall for the next couple of days, especially over mountainous regions. Carolina Velandia, BBC News.
Friends, our next story is one that gives you the feel that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in a certain area, we're going to show you video from, it seems like it's a really nice community where the police like to be easygoing, nice, friendly, wonderful folk, which is really the way things should be. But after 3 of their police officers were killed, you know, you can know it's going to make people tighten up a little bit. We're going to hear from Constable Damien Thoroat from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as he warns residents in this part of Canada to stay inside and lock your doors.
Around 7:30 on June 4th, while responding to a call of an armed man in the north end of the city of Moncton, 3 of Kodiak RCMP's officers were shot and killed. 2 other officers were also injured, but their life is not threatened at this time. At this precise moment, we are still actively looking for the shooter. He is believed to still be in the Pinehurst subdivision area of Moncton. We are urging the people who live in that area to stay inside and lock their doors, and to the people to stay away from that area if they don't have to be in there, to allow us to do our job and locate this individual as quickly as possible.
Friends, in our next story, the leaders of the G7 group of industrialized nations meeting in Brussels have said they are prepared to impose further sanctions on Russia if it does not help restore stability to eastern Ukraine. You know, that's amazing to me, because here you've got Iran doing all the stuff they've been doing, and the United States pulls sanctions off of a country you can't trust. The former Secretary of State warned, you know, they'll smile at you, slap you on the back, send you on your way, and then stab you in the back. That's our former Secretary of State, Schultz, told us that just a couple of months ago in a video, and before all the sanctions got released on Iran. And here they are now trying to place sanctions against a country that, they don't believe in talk, they believe in action. Boom, boom. Just like they got into Crimea and they grabbed it off. They said, now we'll talk status quo. And talking sanctions after Russia has gone over to China and made a deal with China for selling their gas to China now, and made a deal to let's start trading. China, you and me, Russia and China, let's start trading without the U.S. dollar. Let's use our money, your money, some other money than the United States dollar. Our sanctions are going to only go so far against Russia. And, Russia believes in pounce. United States has shown itself as one that just does a lot of fluffy talk. And we got stories on that. Let's play this one. I got to get you to a story where related to Israel, where people are understanding the United States has just become, like Leviticus 26:19 says, it's lost the pride of its power. Oh yeah, it's still got the power, but it doesn't have the will power or the heart to use the power. It's just, and if it does say we're going to use it, and then it decides, well, no, we won't. It makes me ashamed to say I'm from the United States anymore in this present day and time. But, we got an enemy, just like that last story showed how you had a nice, friendly area in Canada where the police like to be easygoing and friendly, but then you got this one kook, this one demon-possessed kook, comes into the town and shoots up shoots and kills 3 police officers. You know, the God of this world, Satan the devil, is angry now. He knows he has but a short time, and he's doing crazy lunatic stuff to just making a mess of things around the world, and he's readying the world for round 3 of World War. But let's take a look at this summit, which is the first since Russia was expelled from the group following the annexation of Crimea. Diplomatic correspondent James Robbins reports.
The club of the world's elite is shrinking. Today, just 7 national leaders. The family photo tells the story of Russia's suspension and isolation, punishment for its actions in Ukraine. This was the G8 a year ago. Then Vladimir Putin was welcomed by David Cameron as host, but the Russian president's been scrubbed out, for now at least. The rest say it's the price of abandoning democratic values. After today's slimmed-down session, President Obama and the Prime Minister emerged with a clear ultimatum to Mr. Putin. Stop Russian support for separatists in Ukraine within a month, or face far harsher sanctions aimed at the heart of Russia's economy.
The next month will be vital in judging if President Putin has taken these steps. And that is what I will urge President Putin to do when I meet him later today.
James Robinson, BBC. Mr. President, do you see real possibilities of opening up a path away from crisis?
There is a path in which Russia has the capacity to engage directly with President Poroshenko now. He should take it. If he does not, if he continues a strategy of undermining the sovereignty of Ukraine, then we have no choice but to respond.
For now, there's no sign of an end to the violence in eastern Ukraine as separatists and government forces fight for political control. One rebel leader told the BBC there's no going back now. But President Putin asked on French television if he would talk to Ukraine's new president at the D-Day ceremonies, was careful not to rule that out.
Thank you very much, everybody.
That direct dialogue is one thing David Cameron will urge on the Russian leader this evening, carrying the G7's message to Vladimir Putin. James Robbins, BBC News, Brussels.
Friends, in I've got a couple of stories next that I'm going to be reading to you that relates to what's been happening in the Middle East. First of all, this headline from one of the news stories. Kerry, United States Secretary of State Kerry, defends U.S. recognition of new Palestinian cabinet. Now, that story is from yesterday. Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah, who you see in the center of this photo at the head of the table and at the back there, just below the big picture on the wall, he has said his cabinet is committed to all previous agreements with Israel. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has rejected Israeli criticism of his recognition of new Palestinian government formed by Fatah and Hamas. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tuesday, 2 days ago, that he was deeply troubled by the decision. But during a visit to Lebanon, Mr. Kerry noted the ministers were independent technocrats and insisted that they would be watched, quote, very closely. The Islamist movement is considered a terrorist group by Israel and the United States. After swearing in the Unity Government on Monday, Mr. Abbas stressed that no ministers were affiliated to Hamas. No ministers were affiliated to Hamas. Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah said his cabinet was committed to all previous agreements with Israel and would continue, quote, programs of peace aimed at establishing an independent Palestinian state. Now, friends, I wanted you to know what's being said. That's not saying I agree with all that. That's just what the players involved are saying. Now, I'm reading to you from a news story. Such assertions were rejected by Mr. Netanyahu, who urged Washington to make it absolutely clear to the Palestinian president that his pact with Hamas, a terrorist organization that seeks Israel's annihilation or liquidation, is simply unacceptable. Reconciliation between Hamas and Fatah is something that many Palestinians have long wanted. Let me come back to this photo a little bit later. Mr. Netanyahu said, "I'm deeply troubled by the announcement that the United States will work with the Palestinian government backed by Hamas," he told the Associated Press. At a news conference in Beirut, Mr. Kerry played down the dispute and stressed that the United States officials would work with the new cabinet only as we need to, as is appropriate. We are going to be watching it very closely, as we have said from day one, to make absolutely sure that it upholds each of those things that it has talked about, that it doesn't cross the line, Mr. Kerry said. Both the UN and EU have welcomed the new government on the basis of the assurances that it will abide by the commitments of recognition of Israel, nonviolence, and adherence to previous agreements. Well, that's what they'd like you to believe, and they'll play that game for a while till they suck you in, till they suck the allies of Israel in and trips everybody up. And then just first moment they get to blow Israel out while something else is going on that gets the other players sidetracked. You can't trust these guys. They're not going to change their stripes. Continuing from this article, the process of Palestinian reconciliation faces many challenges, but it also creates new opportunities for the peace process. Friends, there's one thing about what's happening between the Arabs, the Palestinians, and the Israelis, the tribe of Judah now living in the little state nation of Israel in the Middle East, and that is most of the Palestinians have been deceived by the Quran, which tells them that Abraham took Isaac up to the mountain to slay him, and that God promised all that land to Isaac. So you've got this quote-unquote so-called holy book called the Quran, that is the Bible of the religion, the Muslim religion of the Islamist, which is what most of the Palestinians are. And you're not going to convince them that that their Bible is not telling them the truth. It's not until Jesus Christ comes back and sets all that straight. Now, friends, from news sources in North America, State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf on Tuesday, 2 days ago, defended the willingness of the U.S. to recognize and fund and even give money to a new Palestinian government affiliated with Hamas. She stressed that the announced lineup of ministers includes none who are members of the militant Palestinian group that has associated or advocated Israel's destruction. They are all technocrats, unaffiliated. See, same words that she's using, same words Kerry using. They got together, they planned this out. Technocrats unaffiliated with any political party and are responsible for facilitating new elections, Harf said. Israel's ambassador to Washington, Ron Dermer, wrote on his Facebook page, "Had Hamas changed, it would be one thing, but Hamas has not changed. It hasn't changed. It remains committed to Israel's destruction today as it was yesterday." Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told AP, all those who genuinely seek peace must reject President Abbas' embrace of Hamas And most especially, I think the United States must make it absolutely clear to the Palestinian president that his pact with Hamas is simply unacceptable. Dor Gold, a former Israeli ambassador to the UN and a foreign policy advisor to Netanyahu, said any international move that legitimizes Hamas is a dangerous mistake. A dangerous mistake. I don't think that people in Washington understand the depth, the deepness, the depth of Israel's disappointment over the decision to support this government, Gold said. Hamas isn't just a terror organization. Hamas is an organization that has adopted an agenda to annihilate Jews. That quote from the Washington Post. Now, friends, wait till you see this story. The United States has been speaking to Hamas through back channels for more than 6 months. U.S. officials have been holding secret back-channel talks with Hamas over the last 6 months, according to senior American and Palestinian diplomatic officials. The meetings were held between United States intermediaries and Hamas leadership, which lives outside the Gaza Strip in third-party countries. During the talks, Hamas gave assurances, including a commitment to maintaining a ceasefire with Israel. State Department spokesman Marie Harf denied there was any such back channel. So, some people are saying one thing, some are saying another, but here's another story, friends. Speaking from a stage decorated with a banner proclaiming, now this is a quote, this is not me saying this, friends, a banner. This banner behind the speaker said, "America cannot do a damn thing." Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, on yesterday, asserted that the Obama administration has taken the option of military intervention to resolve conflicts off the table. Let me read that to you again, because I think I fluffed that a little bit. Read the whole thing. Speaking from a stage decorated with a banner proclaiming America cannot do a damn thing, Iran's supreme leader on Wednesday asserted that the Obama administration had taken the option of military intervention to resolve conflicts off the table. He's taken that option off the table. He will not use military intervention to resolve conflicts. He's going to play the sanctions game. Going on with what the leader here in the meeting said, a military attack is not a priority for Americans now, he concluded. They have renounced the idea of any military actions, he said, reacting to President Obama's speech last week at West Point, in which he asserted that the United States had other ways of carrying out foreign policy besides military force. So listen, our enemies are listening to you, Mr. Obama, and they're picking up on your backing off military and trying to use sanctions and words, and ain't gonna work. All right, friends, what else have we got in today's news I can share before we sign it off? I think, friends, I'll say so long to you now. Wait just a minute. I want to tell you about this. No, I'm not going to tell you about that one tonight. Pardon me for the delay. I was just reading over something. But I do want to do this. I'm going to go ahead and sign off and And yet, I'm going to play an interview that Katty did with Chuck Hagel. It's the full interview. It runs about 14, almost 15 minutes, that Katty did with Chuck Hagel, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel. He's given a wide-ranging interview to the BBC's Katty Mr. Hagel was in Romania to show support for European allies. I say I'm signing off. Thanks for joining us tonight, but if you want to stay around and see this full interview, 14, 15 minutes, this will be the last thing we show on this program. And then this being Thursday night, we'll be off until Sunday night. We don't do a program Friday night or Saturday night. We are here on the weekend on a different channel for those of you who tune in for the church services. We do on another channel. Now, it's still on cogtv.org. It's just a Sabbath service channel. Mr. Hagel was in Romania to show support for European allies and to visit U.S. military personnel amid tensions between Ukraine and Russia. He discussed the crisis as well as defense spending. He also discussed the release of U.S. soldier Bo Bergdahl, and he discussed Scottish independence. Here's that interview. I'll say good night, friends. We'll see you Sunday night for those who join in, God willing, for those who join in for Nightcast next time, and see you on the weekend for those that tune in on our other channel. Here now is the interview, Katty with Chuck Hagel.
Secretary Hagel, we're here in Romania, a NATO country right up against the border with Ukraine. President Putin said today on French television that he doesn't see a revival of Russian nationalism. He's not trying to rebuild the Russian Empire. How much of a threat does Russia pose at the moment to Europe?
Well, I think based on its recent actions, as it essentially illegally annexed Crimea, put over 40,000 of its troops right on the Ukrainian border, I think those actions speak pretty clearly on what his interests are. Now, we know that the Russians are pulling a lot of those troops back, but there are still many that remain. It is critically important for NATO, all of the European nations, to recognize this very real threat and challenge to their security. We have responded to that, I think, very effectively. As you know, I was just in Brussels for 2 days of NATO ministerials. The President's trip to Europe just 2 days ago in Poland, his announcement in Poland of a new $1 billion European initiative to continue to build capabilities of our partners. So all of this needs to be addressed. We need to take action. I think Putin's actions have really coalesced Europe and particularly NATO around more of a common purpose than maybe we've seen in 20 years.
President Obama has announced that you will be giving some military support to the Ukrainians, night vision goggles, body armor, that kind of thing. But you have pro-Russian separatists shooting down Ukrainian helicopters. Don't they need more than that?
Well, we continue to assess all of our assistance continually. And the President's announcement here 2 days ago that we would provide an additional $5 million in non-lethal equipment. That's in addition to the $18 million we've already provided. We'll continue to assess all the different ways we can help. We just, the Department of Defense had a senior team in Ukraine this week working with the Minister of Defense and his people on how we can continue to help build their capacity, train, cooperate, assist, economic assistance. So there are many channels of assistance that we will provide, are providing, continue to provide, and that's also in coalition with our European partners.
A lot of East European countries are clearly nervous, particularly nervous about the Russian threat. Can you guarantee to NATO members in the east of Europe that you would defend under Article 5 every single inch of NATO territory?
We have reassured and committed to that we are very responsible members of NATO, the United States of America. We are committed to our 27 allies in NATO. Article 5 is not just a piece of paper. I said that once again in the last 2 days in Brussels. The President has made it clear. Secretary Kerry has made it clear. I think our actions here over the last few months have also had some resonance on that point, as we have moved rotational troop presence into the Baltics.
So
and
if
Poland.
the Russians went 2 miles into Latvia, you would go to war with Russia?
That's a hypothetical 2 miles in. The bigger point is Article 5 of the treaty is very clear. If any of those members of NATO are violated, are invaded, then all of NATO, all of the 27 other members have a responsibility to come to the defense of our partners. And we, just like the British, just like the French, the Germans, all have committed to this again and again, and we all did again 2 days ago in Brussels.
You've been quite firm during your trip here to Europe on the need for Europeans to invest in their own security. Americans would be justified, wouldn't they, in thinking, hold on a second, why are we ponying up most of the money to defend Europe against a threat that affects them much more than us?
Well, this is an issue that has been around, as you know, Katty, for many years, as we've seen declining defense budgets in Europe. Ours are too, the United States of America, as we come out of 13 years of 2 long, historically long wars. But as you balance your defense budgets, you also have to balance the capability and requirements to not only defend your national security, but the obligations that we all have to each other in these alliances. And it is a concern that we have, the United States. The British have it. In fact, Secretary of Defense Hammond was as vocal on this point the last 2 days as any one minister, that all the members of NATO are going to have to step up and do more. Romania, for example, is doing an awful lot. There are other countries in NATO that have reversed that trend of downward spending for defense. But all the NATO members are going to have to up their contributions.
But they're not doing it. I mean, Germany's spending 1.3% of its GDP on defense. If the threat to Ukraine doesn't make NATO members realize they've got to spend more on their security, what will?
I saw in the meeting here in Brussels the last 2 days, and I think it's probably been my 5th defense ministerial since I've been Secretary of Defense, a considerable change in an environment of seriousness of what's been happening. I mean, in the famous words of Winston Churchill, the jarring gong of reality, and he was talking about World War II, but there's been a jarring gong of reality here in Europe with Russia's actions, and I think that's starting to very clearly resonate to countries here.
So you could see a pickup in defense spending?
I think we will see a trend back toward that increase, and we already are in some countries, and I think we just need to keep the leadership focused on this. All of us have a responsibility, and as I said, I give Phil Hammond a lot of credit for his leadership, but he wasn't the only one. There were other members as well.
Let's talk about Sergeant Bergdahl, who's now in Germany, being released after 5 years of captivity. You spoke to Sergeant Bergdahl's family last night. How are they responding to the criticism in the public surrounding their son's release?
Well, his parents are amazingly strong people. Any of us who are parents, I know you're a parent, I'm a parent, has that dimension to us that I don't care how professional you are or whatever your other responsibilities or professional obligations are, you're still a parent. And I wanted to first reassure them that we were doing everything we possibly could to help rehabilitate him, get his health back where it needs to be, so that he can get reunited with his family and brought back into society, quite frankly. I know of the criticism. I've been the target of it, so I'm quite aware of it. We did the right thing here. I wanted to reassure them that the President feels very strongly about this. I feel very strongly about it. I've been to war. I know a little something about this. And this was the right decision for the right reasons. We don't leave our people behind. How, circumstances, why, the disappearance, the Army has already addressed that, and we'll get to that. But these are strong people, and they're reassured. They're thankful that their son is safe. they're prepared to help do everything they can to get him put back together.
American senators were briefed last night. Many of them are still not convinced. What was the urgency in doing this deal? What specifically made you do it without going to Congress and saying, we want to give you a heads up here?
Well, obviously, I can't get into all the specifics of the details and the intelligence and the information, but we are doing that, by the way, just so you're aware of it. We had 3 hearings yesterday, not hearings, but meetings, briefings, to all members of the Senate, to staff members, senior staff members. We'll follow on with this next week when all the members are back. So we're being completely transparent in where we need to be.
But he's out now. Can't we know what the health issue was?
Well, yes, we'll get to all those questions, but I'm going to answer your bigger question. There's a lot of classified information in how we got him out, when we got him out, methods used. These are important classified documents. Now, we're sharing these things, by the way, in classified forums with appropriate committees. To your bigger question, why now? It was our judgment, based on the information that we had, that his life, his health were in peril. And
imminently?
Well, when you say imminently, it's easy for us to sit here and look behind and say, well, 24 hours, 48 hours. It was our judgment, and it was unanimous, by the way, I might add. It was the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Director of National Intelligence, Attorney General. We all came to the same conclusion that we didn't want to take any chances here.
Mr. Secretary, you're going to testify before Congress next week. Can you guarantee to members of the U.S. Congress that the 5 detainees who were released from Guantanamo Bay will be held in the conditions that the United States would find tolerable?
Well, let me answer your question this way, and this is what I will say, of course, in the hearing. My 2 responsibilities under the law, one, did I feel it was in the national security interests of the United States of America to release him? That's the first consideration I have to sign off on. And by the way, all the other members of the cabinet that I mentioned agreed with me. It was in consultation with them. That's the first. Second, to your point, the substantial mitigation of risks. There are always risks in everything, but I was satisfied, all the other members of the cabinet, the President of the United States in his direct conversations with the Emir of Qatar, and the commitments that the President received directly, and all the other pieces that we put in place to mitigate this risk. I was satisfied that was mitigated enough, that risk for our country, that it was in
But the
interest.
Taliban clearly sees this as a victory. They wouldn't have released that video otherwise.
Well, I don't know why they released the video, but that's irrelevant, Katty, whether they think it's a victory or not. Let's look at the bottom line. We have back in our possession our one prisoner of war that was still outstanding. We have him back. Now, I don't think that's insignificant. I think the American public believe that we, as the leaders of our government, have some responsibility for taking care of our people. We say we do. We say our motto is we leave no one behind. And we've always done this. We've always made every effort, our armed forces, to get our people back. Mitigating circumstances and all the rest as to how, and which we will look at later, let's put that aside. The fact is, I think it's important for our individual military members to know that we will continue to find them and get them wherever they are. I think that's a big assurance for our military men and women to know and be confident of that.
I just want to ask you one question about Scotland, which of course, as you know, votes on a referendum on independence in September. If Scotland votes for independence, would you say yes to Scotland becoming a member of NATO? Well,
first of all, that's an internal matter. The United States doesn't take positions on that. I know this will be sorted out in an appropriate way. There are elections coming up. We're all for elections, and right now we're dealing with our issues and responsibilities. We value the relationship, the partnership, the friendship of the UK, always have, and they're as trusted and important a partner and friend as we have in the world. So however it comes out, we wish everyone well, and we're going to continue to work strongly on every occasion, on every issue with the UK.
Secretary Hagel, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Until next time, friends, your host Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth saying good night. Have a wonderful weekend, friends. Till next time.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.